welcome to episode 48 of Native Paranormal Crossroads. I am Laura Massey from Two Feathers Medicine with the Paranormal Rangers, but we're minus 2/3. I think Stan and John are off speaking somewhere, are they, Michelle?
Yeah, they're off. Well, they're off on an assignment at the moment.
Okay, cool. So I'm with Michelle Miners from Paranormal Rangers, and we've got an exceptional guest tonight as a Navajo medicine man, Art Hardy. Hi, Art. It's nice to meet you. We've not met before.
Right. Thank you for having me.
It's fabulous to have you here. Really
Thank
good
you.
to have you on. Can you give us, you've probably did this before because you've been on with Andrew,
Right.
but a little bit of your background would be great that I don't know and possibly some viewers don't.
Sure. Well, first of all, my name is Art Hardy. I come from the Navajo Nation. I'm a full-blooded Navajo. I've been practicing my arts for, I don't know, about almost 20 years now. I've gotten a lot of experience with the paranormal through these experiences, ceremonies that I conduct. And currently, I'm trying to finish up my business degree. I work with the Navajo Nation tribe, the tribal government. I'm a project manager and hopefully moving up soon to be a legislative staff assistant at some point. So that's pretty much where I'm at.
What sort of projects do you manage, Art?
We have different right now we're doing a renovation of a facility that used to be a preschool, but now we're turning it into a senior citizen center. So that's what we're doing. We're working on that now. And as the project manager for that, I do all of the documentation, proposals, etc. Anything related to it. Meet me with the contractors, selection, etc.
So how did you two meet, Michelle?
Well, it's interesting. I met him through Jonathan Dover, and come to find out we belong to the same Navajo clan. So in our clan is Kiani, and I am of the same clan. And I would be considered his mother. He would be my son, according to the way the hierarchy works. And I'm only joking. It's just the relationships of how things work with the Navajo Nation within a clan.
Okay, like a sort of extended family constellation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Somewhere our bloodlines touch, a great grandfather, great grandmother, who knows, and a great aunt, uncle. There's some kind of bloodline that follows that lineage. And so, but because we belong to that clan, we regard each other as family members. And that's how that works. And yeah, it's been fun.
That's beautiful. So what were you going to go on, Michelle?
I would say I gained another son. I have 4 sons. I've got number 5.
Is he less expensive than the others?
Yes, he is. He's doing great things in his life. Our associations have come as a result of us talking to one another and share each other's lives, and what have we been doing throughout our lives. And it's fascinating to hear of his story, and Art has been a very wonderful person to know, and we've really enjoyed his association with the Paranormal Rangers. I know Jonathan and Stan have had associations with him, being out there on the Navajo reservation. They have a special relationship to Art himself.
Beautiful. So what were we going to talk about tonight, Michelle? Because I'm sure we could ask Art questions forever.
Yeah, exactly. He has such a storyline. Art and I were talking about, recently there have been 7 alignments of the planets in our celestial sphere. And Art was telling me that there is a tie to the Navajo lore that is very descriptive of just what happened in this phenomena. And I want him to share that with the audience and us today.
Fabulous. Over to you, Art.
Well, thank you again for having me, Michelle and Laura.
You're welcome.
It's a privilege to to hang out and to catch up on stories and everything. Um, so we have in the Navajo Nation or Navajo culture, we do have a lot of stories related to stars. Our people consider themselves to be natural stargazers in the effect that we've had our creation stories surround the celestial, not only the body but the atmosphere as well as creation. And it gets pretty deep when you get into these stories. So one of the main stories that I can share with you to kind of give you an idea of why everything is related. So we had a creation story about a coyote and the one we called the god of darkness. And I'm going to speak in English. If I know the names in Navajo, but I don't want to confuse anyone. I think it's easier to say it in English just for the audience and for everyone to understand. So anyway, the coyote and the god of darkness, his name in Navajo, just for reference, is going to be Husht Aitlajine. So that's the god of darkness. And so he was basically creating a huge with the stars, which they were crystals. The stars are crystals, quartz crystals to be exact. He was placing them in the night sky, and he was making designs. And what he was doing was he was showing us a pathway to what we call Hojonja, is the blessing way or the good way of life. And the imagery that he was creating was going to show us basically the secrets to having a very good way of living. I'm not going to say it was based on morals, but it's more about your happiness, your state of mind, and things like that. And so, because he was taking his time at creating all of these designs, the coyote in our stories, he's referred to as the trickster, and he comes along and he starts to get interested, and he's a very impatient deity or entity in these stories, and so he's always causing trouble. And what ended up happening was he wanted to get involved in that process, and he wanted to take the crystals and put some up there for himself. And well, the god of darkness was happy to help him out, or give or let him take one of the crystals and put it wherever he wanted to put it at. And so he did that. He took one crystal, put it into the night sky, and to this day it's still there, and they refer to that as Ma'i Bason, or the coyote star of the coyote in English translation. And so he wanted to do more, and he was getting impatient because this was taking too long, and he doesn't listen to authority is what it is, and he always seems to do his own thing. And we don't want to say he's a sociopath, but he might be narcissistic in some way. But anyway, he doesn't know how to listen, and he grabbed this big design that was on the ground there that the god of darkness was utilizing, and it was a deer skin. And on the deer skin had all these crystals and different sizes, shapes, etc. And so he grabbed that and he flipped it up into the air to make the process faster. And those ended up landing random, and that became our night sky. So as the Navajo culture or Navajo teaching goes, we never really got to see the full design of the night sky, the stars, or anyway, the designs that were there. So we ended up with very few constellations to live off of and to help us navigate life. And some of those deities that exist in the sky today, so when you look at Orion, the great hunter, we have a name for him in our own culture, and he's called the Slender One in English, and the translation of it anyway. And so he represents strength, honor, and so when we say our prayers and we go out into the nighttime, or even the beginning of the day, the dawn, we do know that these deities are listening to us, and for reference, we often use their names in our prayers, certain prayers that are referenced to these deities. And so if you wanted to get a promotion in your job, or you're being put in a position of authority of some kind, You can say your prayers, and you can reference Husky Sikaya, which was in reference to a man who's kind of sitting with his arms crossed. He's a very sturdy figure, and he'll be, just he shows that he's a man of power. And we reference these deities in our prayers, and that helps promote our mind, our mindset, and we kind of invoke that personality. We invoke that their strengths and what they represent to us, and so that's where it starts. And so that's kind of the basis and the preface for any other type of celestial action, or anything that's been happening relative to stars. And it gets a lot deeper. I'll go a little bit deeper into it. As a human being, we're made of energy. We know this, and we understand it that way as well when we conduct our ceremonies, which is why we use crystals. Crystals are probably geometry wise, crystals have a almost a perfect geometry in shape and form, and the way that they're designed naturally. They also have a vibrational frequency that they radiate, that can encompass, depending on the size of the crystal, can encompass X amount of space. And so that crystal is a direct contact, or telephone line, or whatever you want to call it, a Wi-Fi line, to the stars and to the gods of the darkness. And there's quite a few gods that exist in our prayers and our stories that we utilize for various times within our lifetime or within a daytime period. So obviously, for whatever we experience through our life, there's always going to be a type of reference in relation to where the stars are going to be at, celestial timing, even during the day where the sun travels across the sky. There's a story behind that, as the sun is a star, and we know that, but it's also a crystal in our stories. And so we call this person that has been tasked to carry this heavy crystal across the sky day after day for us. He was asked by the gods to perform this duty in service, and basically forever. And so when this deity picked up the crystal, he made a reference that it's going to require energy every day to carry this huge crystal across the sky. And so this deity requires life at the end of the day. And so at the end of the day, when the sun is setting, there's human life that is taken, human energy that is taken, and it's revitalized through this deity, so that the next day he has the ability to carry the sun across the sky again, and so on and so forth. And so you can see the relevance and how our stories play into life and death and the natural order of things, and why we would have death in this realm or this reality, and why it's necessary to respect that type of teaching or death in this relation. Once you start to understand a lot of these stories, you start to understand that everything happens for a reason, and there's a purpose to everything. And even those stars that are out there that we call planets, our ancestors have noticed and have been reading the skies for centuries, and so they've come up with stories in relation to the position of the stars, and they're able to understand. And this is when we get into like plantation. We go out and we plant our crops. There's a certain time period of the year that we do that. These are some very common stories, and they're probably told in different ways, different forms, but I'm trying to give you the short version of these stories. Around June or so, we have the Seven Sisters. I think that's what it's called in the English version. But that body of stars, once it disappears down the horizon, that's when it's time for us to plant. As it starts to appear in the eastern horizon during the sunrise, that's when we stop planting. And they should never see what we are doing. We have to hide the fact that we're creating this action. That's the only way our corn survives year after year. Now, if we do this out of sequence with the stars, we run into trouble. We have a lot of issues with the crop, etc. So there's a natural order to things. It's not always going to be based upon a calendar or a watch. If you're able to read the stars, the sun, the moon, even the moon tells us when it's going to be cold or when it's going to be hot. And you can see that the moon will either be highly visible. Sometimes you'll be some type of fogginess to it when you look up at night or during. A lot of that is relevant to how we predict the weather and what's coming. So there's stories to that as well. So the hanging moon, when you see the crescent hanging down like this, you know that it's the weather's changing. There's certain parts of the year that we use the moon just for that specific reason, to either harvest or prepare for coming rain or the coldness. And when we realize it's going to be the coldest time of year, that's what we use the moon for. And you can see the moon practically throughout the month. Even in the darkness, you still have a silhouette of the moon to some level. And so they even use that for reference. So that translates to what we do down here on Earth and how we perform our daily lives and how we take care of ourselves as a celestial body within ourselves. So like there's a lot of knowledge that's based around spirituality, and we live in a world that is three-dimensional, and we believe there are other dimensions that can exceed the third dimension all the way up to the 12th dimension, I believe is where they're at now. And so in our stories, we have about the same type of understanding as to know that this dimension we live in, we're going to pass through at some point. And when that transition happens, we become a body of energy. And when you get to the fourth dimension, you got to think about time. In theory, right? I think Einstein came up with the theory that the fourth dimension will be time, and everything that'll be the framework. Now, when you transfer yourself from a physical mass, which the third dimension is space, you end up understanding that what's inside of us is energy. And so when we release this mass, which is our body, we transfer into this other state, which would be a fourth dimensional state. We turn into energy. And the only way that you can harness that energy or create such an environment that energy just doesn't dissipate or turn into something else. You might have a form of some kind in the fourth dimension. And what gives you that form is time. Time is the thing that creates a structure necessary for energy to exist, and it can create a structure in itself. So in our teachings, in our stories, we do have a story that's related to that transition too. So it goes back to the stars, and how we understand the movement of the earth, the energy of the earth, the energy of the universe, the energy of everything that we know to be true in this reality, something that you actually can touch, has a physical state of some kind. And the crystal seems to create enough energy that it can translate. And one of the things that we're limited to understanding is communication from the universe, celestial. People say we have 5 senses, but honestly, we have 7 senses. So by science, they say, oh, in this third dimension, there's only 5 senses. But when you get into the spiritual world, we actually have 7 senses. And so with those 7 senses, the fifth or the sixth and the seventh sense, we always say, oh, you have a sixth sense about you, or you used your sixth sense. Well, that's your intuition, right? That's what we refer to as the intuition. You got a bad feeling about something, etc. And the seventh is going to be the telepathy that we all possess. To some level, we do have telepathy, especially in a group setting. You find that you can, and this is proven science, you can find out that a lot of people are thinking the same thing, even though they might not have the same information, and they always come to the same conclusion. And that's where everything that I'm talking about correlates and becomes that knowledge that we need to understand the celestial part of our existence. Once you leave the reality of the earth or the reality of the procedures we do in a society, you step outside of that, and then you start to see that you really are a part of the universe in a lot of energetic ways. So, and when these stars, what we call planets, I guess, when they lined up and they come into a certain type of order, it's almost the same as what we understand as when the sun and the moon cross paths. When they cross their paths, we consider that a union of sexual nature. And then I'll just say it like that because they're creating a new world. They're going to have something, some new energy is being formulated from that gathering that they have, and therefore we're not allowed to watch it. Well, as Native Navajos, anyway, we're not allowed to look at those formulations, and we should have respect and not be making noise. And even the animals understand this because during those time periods when eclipses are going on, the animals are dead silent, quiet. There's no noise outside. It's really eerie. And so if the animals can understand that, I mean, why can't we? Obviously, we have a conscious mind and we're autonomous in a lot of ways, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have that respect. In turn, it's like, well, you have to be grateful for what's been given to you. Even in the Bible, it's written the same way. So we have a lot of similarities in stories between religious, and we've got to understand that religious or theology of some kind is very different from spiritual or spiritual world, spiritualism in general. And you don't have to necessarily believe in God to be a spiritual person. And spiritual life is based upon what we have internalized, and they do have three dimensions to spiritualism. And so when you get into religion, it's body, spirit, and mind. When you get into spirituality, it's vertical, horizontal, and internal. And that's evident. And I think they try to cross paths and they try to create a connection between, is why they use the cross, vertical, horizontal. And then we talk about internalizing God or the teachings of some type of theology. In spiritualism, it's the same, where you have your vertical, your horizontal, and then your internal. And the vertical is related to some type of religious belief. The horizontal is related to something that's around you that you can see at this level. And then the internal is going to be what we consider our spirit or our soul, and our energy, things like that. So depending on what you believe in, you would fall into one of those categories, is how I understand it. And when you get into that, the understanding, now you get a clearer picture of why these events are they're so important to us, and they should be important to the world, not only to the Navajo people. It's telling us something, right? It's a rebirth of some kind. Energy has transformed, and the universe is speaking to us, and we don't take the time to listen. We tend to I'm pretty sure the world questions why these things are going on, or what is there a relevance to it, and what would be a story behind it. And recently I've learned that a lot of non-natives have been asking natives, like, what is the relevancy to what's happening, because the stories that they have are not related to what we would consider more of a natural type understanding versus a scientific understanding. Obviously, you can get into astrology and say, oh, it's going to happen sooner or later. They're going to line up. This is, what's going to happen mathematically. It can't go on forever, etc. But in our world, we consider it a very a spiritual time, spiritual movement. Things are happening. The universe in itself is considered to be an entity in a body of some kind. And so when you look into the darkness has its own type of body, its own type of mind, its own type of conscious. And that's evident. That's evident in the way that it transpires its information to us. And what we are limited to what we understand, because we're emotional beings. I mean, primarily we are emotional beings. How do you understand information as it's being distributed to you? If you look at a two-dimensional state of communication, your mind will make up some type of voice to what you're reading. And that's just the way it goes. That's the only way our mind can understand what we're reading or what we're understanding. When you get into a three-dimensional type of communication, you throw emotion in there. Well, now whatever you're saying has to be understood emotionally as well as collective intelligently. And when you do that, then you start to realize there's limitations that come with that. Obviously, your ego is going to be a big thing. And within your ego, whether you accept or deny that information becomes an issue. Again, emotional response is the key. Now, if you're overloaded with information, your emotional state will not fully comprehend and fully translate that information into something that your mind would comprehend completely. And so sometimes people get tired when they get too much knowledge, too much information too quickly. They start to drift and they get very tired. And that's the evidence there, like the scientific part, but like, oh, I'm overloading you. And this is why it's used in psychological warfare. They use that same type of psychology in when they're interrogating folks, or when they want to control a society, they use the same type of understanding. And so that's how we know our human body and our human state to be. Where once you understand all of this, it becomes easier to navigate your life as a spiritual being, and all of it is relevant. It's relevant to your celestial existence and to the celestial teachings and events that are happening. And this is all simultaneously. And the only reason why time exists to us, is what some of the scientists, even Einstein had said before, was because you have a conscious mind, you have a memory, and therefore you have a past, and therefore you can think of a future. And so when you look at it from that respect, then you got to understand that when you ground yourself, you're grounding yourself in the moment, and the energy that you bring about you is either going to be good or bad, depending on your state of mind. And so on and so forth. So with the recent celestial events that have happened, it's a union between all the creators or the gods that are brothers and sisters in relation to our sun, etc. And when that happens, it's kind of like they clean house. There's something that transpired that we here wouldn't understand completely. Because we're limited in our understanding because of our emotional beings, our emotional part of us. So we have to think outside the box, and it takes a long time to take that information and translate it and break it up to where we will completely receive that knowledge in the way that it was presented to us. So,
You know, Art, I really appreciate you talking about this artificial way of how we're given information about our moon, because there is a concept out there saying that it's an artificial moon, and that the moon was really not there, but it's now moved into our solar system as an artificial spaceship. And you hear these kind of wild stories. Is that kind of the warfare that you're talking about, overloading our senses from a scientific way of looking at the existence of how the moon is transformed to the knowledge of these new age type of information that is that another warfare tactic? Are we being sold something for being overloaded by something? There's another concept that takes us away from the natural state of the solar system, telling us, no, this is a real celestial event. And I know I put a lot in there, but what are your thoughts about that?
I think that you can really look at the evidence that's been presented to us. I mean, recently we've had a lot of changes that were made in a short period of time in the country, and that can be that actually is evidence that supports what I'm talking about, an overload of information. And so what ends up happening is the initial shock wears off, and then we normalize the behavior. And once we normalize that behavior, we just accept it. And it's like dumbing down that individual. We do that every day with ourselves as we get on social media or anything else, where we're dumbing ourselves down to a point to where we're part of the status quo. so to speak, and it can be considered some type of psychological warfare that's happening. And if you want to become part of that war or become a soldier of some kind, then you would remain autonomous. You would remove yourself out of the situation and you would continue to study your own type of spiritualism, your own body, your own mind. And you would remember that, you have that ability to project energy and bring energy into yourself. The Taurus effect is something that's been talked about by Tesla. And we have a Taurus about ourselves and is constantly rotating energy. And so if we don't invoke items that we consider technical or technological, we have to, like this computer that's sitting before me, I would have to invoke this computer as part of my being and to some level in order for it not to mess with my aura, my energy, my own type of Taurus effect that's happening, to give me the clearest state of mind that I need, and not feel like it's affecting me or attacking me. And we don't really think about those things consciously, but it happens to all of us. And it happens quite frequently, so much so that your energy is distorted. And you feel, I don't feel right today. I feel depressed. I feel sad. I have this emotion. And your emotional response to things will actually is trying to tell you something. If you would listen to that a little bit more, then you would understand that you should be taking precautionary measures for that. But if once you see the magic trick and you understand the magic trick, then it doesn't work on you anymore. And I think that's the idea, is to communicate and educate a society or a community that this is what their actual intention is. And we can say that, oh, this is all theoretical, but is it really? I mean, we're seeing the effects of it already. It doesn't take very much. You just have to go out and talk. You can talk to your family members and good understanding of what I'm talking about, and see that the fear is real, and to minimize fear and to minimize that type of feeling of hopelessness that comes along with that overload of information, is education, right? Education is going to be the thing that brings you back out of it, because now you understand the threat, you understand the situation, you create a procedure of some kind. And once you have that plan in your mind or an understanding of it, the fear goes away. And that's typical of human behavior.
Just finding our roots in spirituality, of which you're speaking about today, is something that you've studied throughout being a medicine man. And people come to you because they want the knowledge of how to ground themselves, or how to get that spirituality back into their own being sphere, Taurus, whatever you want to call that. It's just a matter of, this is why we're doing the show, is to get this information out there from a Native American perspective, because natives have been always sought after. You guys are the wisest, knowledge knowing, you haven't forgot your roots type of thing. And in some essence, yes, but in some essence, we have been dumbed down too, because we're losing our language. We're losing a lot of things to modern society and science. We have to prove through facts. And like you said, we have the facts based on these things being handed to us through our ancestral lines, through, time. And so what you're talking about is getting back to our spirituality, being focused on becoming who we are as ourselves.
Correct. Your true state of being, and anybody can perform that on their own behalf. All it takes is just the understanding that you don't have to be a part of the system. You can remove yourself out of the system that's been put before us. There's a comment that I read just a while ago that says social programming, and I mean that is true. That's what ends up happening. But you can't create a society and then not understand how to control them. And so by removing intelligence out of that whole scenario, you will have a body of people that have no choice but to rely on whatever authority that's there, that may be more intelligent to some level. So, and That could be what's going on now. We don't really know until we know, till it actually happens, until we see this years later, maybe a century from now, when all this is looked back and we say, oh, look at the history. This is what was happening. Then you can truly analyze it. But at this point, I think it's all theoretical, but we see small evidence of what's been taking place lately.
Yeah, somebody made a comment that NASA's now studying the lunar moon cycle in Chaco Canyon. I found that was really
Right.
interesting, and you have to know why. What is your focus of the? I mean, what do you think
The
about
lunar
that?
cycle in Chaco Canyon. I'm sorry, say that again.
Yeah, yeah. This lunar cycle is being studied by NASA in Chaco as we speak. This comment from
I mean, the evidence
Reinvent.
again is right before us. You see, the sun has changed and moved its positions as to where it used to be. If you lived in your house long enough, you can see that the sun has moved in a completely different manner now. Where it used to set 5 or 6 years ago, it's actually moved further south now, and so on and so forth. So you're aware of the situation. You just don't pay attention to it enough to know that something's going on. And what they've told us is, oh, the earth wobbles, the earth wobbles and we have this effect. And oh, the North Pole and South Pole, the polarities are changing. So scientifically they're trying to explain it away. But the natives at the time that exist in that time period and what they observed, it's probably heavily related to what's happening now. I mean, there's a cycle of things, right? There's a cycle of things. And so if they're studying that moon or whatever may be drawn, petroglyphs or whatever it may be, then obviously there's a reason and a purpose for that. And why would they want to go back to this old information? And why would they be studying that? For what reason would they have? What would be their purpose in that? And so there's a lot of ways you can go with this, and it would actually just be more theory than proven science. But in our world, Navajo world, we have 13 months. That's what we've always believed. And the way that we understand the way the world works, we go off of celestial time, right? We do not go off of what's been given to us by Roosevelt. Hey, we're taking away an hour, we're giving away an hour. Like, we didn't know any of that. We never have gone by that stuff until recently. We've been assimilated, and now this is where we're at with this, our mindset, and we believe what's been told to us only because we weren't there at the time of its conception or its invention. Now, if you go back to the old ways and you start to understand what they were trying to do or what they understood, it's a more authentic version of experience that they had. That authentic information is what we're trying to get back to, so that we can live a more fulfilling life and understand exactly how we were supposed to live. That's what it's about, is authenticity.
It's really interesting because daylight savings time messes up the cycles within the body itself, because we're tired, we can feel the energy shifts in our own lives where we're like, I wish we didn't have daylight savings time. Events, like you said, Roosevelt created that back in the day. But or was that Benjamin Franklin? I think it was Benjamin Franklin who did that. But it's really interesting. So can you give us some pointers of how to shift back to the celestial calendar as you're speaking about?
You can do that right now. You just have to stop believing in the system that's been provided to you. That's all it is. Just train your mind to stop seeing what society has created. Sit in a dark room long enough and you will come to your own conclusions, and your body will naturally feel the state that it needs to be in. That's why people meditate. They go back to that natural order of things that's within them. And we don't allow social media, electronics. You have to sit in an area that's not highly energized. Sitting in a house is fully energized. You got energy all over you. You have, your phone's right next to you. And so if you went out into a very secluded area that's just full of nature, you don't have any electronics or anything there. Now you're going off of the Earth's energy, the magnetic fields, the natural magnetic fields that exist. And so now you take your shoes off and you put your feet into the ground, You've become grounded once again with the energy of the earth, and so you can purify yourself over and over that way. It's a natural way of taking negative energy from yourself and releasing it back into the earth or into the atmosphere, depending on what you believe and how you think about such things. But that's probably the fastest way to do something like that.
So what you're saying is actually every day we can reclaim our place back in the natural world.
Right, right. You if you're disciplined enough, and people might look at you crazy and say, "Oh, you're losing your mind." And I'm going to tell you guys a short story. The other day, 2 weeks ago, it was about 2 weeks ago, I bought a tray of nachos, and I had, it's covered in cheese, got the jalapenos, and I'm sitting there, and before I take a bite of my nachos, I'm talking to it. I'm saying, "You're going to be the best chip of my life, and you're going to heal my body. My mind is going to be sharper than everything." And then I eat the chip. And so my kids come in, my daughter, and they're teenage daughters, and they come in and they're just like, "What the heck is going? Like, what do we walk in on? What is Dad doing to his nachos? And why is he talking to the nachos?" And so they started laughing at me, and they were like, "Dad, you're crazy." I said, it's proven that if you talk to your food before you eat it, it actually internalizes goodness into you. And so I know these nachos are not good for me, so I'm trying to make it good for me. And they thought it was the funniest thing. And I showed them some videos on that water has a memory. Water has a
Yes.
memory. And so the food in itself is a molecular structure where we are God in some ways, from some form or fashion. We can manifest things that happen to us, and we can manifest other types of masses that are around us, whatever that may be. We can manipulate it with our energy, our harmonics, and our vibrational frequencies that we get out through vocal communication. And so I was trying to tell them, and so by the end of all that, they're like, I think I believe you. And they said, "Is this why people pray to their food?" I said, "It's exactly why they pray to their food." I said, "But we don't call them crazy, do they?" And I said, "Here I am talking to my nachos, and you guys are looking at me like I've lost my mind."
I think that's a great story. I was talking to John recently in the last couple of days, and we were talking about the power of the word. And we did bring up the water, thing with the Japanese gentleman who did those experiments on crystallizing through the power of the word, yelling at the crystal, and it turned black, and then nurturing it with
Right.
positive, and that has been done. And like you said, prayer is very significant. And I like that you talk to your nachos. A lot of people talk to their plants.
Right. Right. That was pretty funny.
And so to get the health grow, you had a healthy snack. No.
Yeah, there was a scientific study that was done on that, and they had a group of people go into one room. They told them exactly what the food was, the cholesterol content, the sugars, the
Oh,
salts. Right after they got done eating, they tested them, and they came back that they had high cholesterol, their salts went up, their blood pressure was high. They took the same exact food, they put it in a different room. They told these individuals that this is the most purest state of form of food you can have. It's the healthiest stuff ever. They ate it. They came out, no blood pressure issues, no increased salt, no increased cholesterol. And this study was done over a 10-year period. And so there's a lot of evidence that support that. It's the mindset. It's a frame of mind. It's the way you think, you project, the way you speak, you can influence. So understanding it from those perspectives, you then start to see that Native Americans had this, all along. We've had this teaching in Navajo culture. We talk about your mouth being a god of some kind. We have to watch what we say, because you can hurt, you can harm, but you also can heal, and other factors that come from your words, your mouth, your communication, etc. And so I believe it's the same type of concept that they use for these studies, in the fact that what we hear translates and manifests exactly what's going to happen and how it's going to benefit us. And so if someone tells you that something is cancerous, your mind has already received that information, is already turning it into something that's real, and it will actually
Right.
make it that way for you. So over time, you can get yourself sick. So if you constantly believe you're sick, I mean, you're going to live in a sick existence. Now, if you believe yourself to be of good health, you have the power to defeat that. The story of Christ is one of heroism, but it also teaches us that we can transcend death. You know, we can ascend from this place, this physical world. And at the very end, when Christ died, he came back, is what the story is, but he defeated death. Is that a state of mind? He was so spiritual in nature, and he had such control over his mind and his emotion that he was able to transcend death and defeat death ultimately. And so that's a story of heroism to mortal beings such as us.
Well, this thing of we create our own reality is something that we've come so far away from, and it needs to be something that's brought back into the education system, doesn't it? Because everything you're talking about, art, this living this beautiful natural way of life, is we've just come so far away from that in schools. And there must
Correct.
be a way that we can bring this back with, and it won't be overwhelming. At the scientific side and all that we were talking about earlier can be overwhelming. But listening to your story of Coyote and the stars and how they were formed is a beautiful way of teaching. And there must be a way that we can do that in the future for our children, and well, not not our children now, but maybe our grandchildren and great grandchildren. Things
Right.
need to change. I mean, I know very much that, you know, we need to listen to the indigenous. We need to listen to their natural view of things so we can start living that natural way again, living in alignment with the earth energies and not with all the false energies that are put around us. And I'm not excluding AI, because you can, as you were saying, you can bring AI into this, you can bring in your computer, because I've now learned to talk nicely to my desktop or my laptop, whatever, if I want it to work. It's part of my energy field. I believe that I create my own reality to a great extent. So if I must be affecting this desktop that I'm using. So and it does work. So and then there's the belief, you know, that you were
Right.
talking about earlier.
And it's kind of funny, but a lot of these teachings have been happening through the media for decades. Poltergeist, the movie Poltergeist 2, where the Native American man talks to the car and the car starts up. Throughout the whole movie, the car is giving the guy problems, and he walks over with his feather and says some stuff, and boom, the car turns on, drives off perfect. And that is one way to understand the control you have, and how you can manifest things into reality just based upon what you're saying, the energy you provide, the energy you receive. It is a very powerful medicine, so to speak, that you understand life that way. And being a medicine man, you have to have that type of mindset so that you're true to what you're saying, you're authentic in your prayer and your understanding and your teaching. If I didn't have this belief and I didn't understand it, I don't know how much of an impact I could have made on someone that I was helping with my prayers or my ceremonies. Obviously, you're not going to hire the guy that doesn't believe in anything. That's going to be helping or healing you. Even a doctor has a certain belief that he can help a person, whether it's mentally, physically, or what other way they do. But we turn to them because we believe them. And so that belief is what creates framework for these prayers to work too, just the same way. You take that concept or that analogy and you can apply it to the spiritual world.
You know, Art, we had an interesting thing happen on our show a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about, we call them SWs, without mentioning them online. We had an incident after the Rangers and I got off the show where we were talking about, the show, and we were feeling this kind of energy, and we were taking the bitter medicine and so on, and it, you know, and as that was occurring, we were off camera, and then a lip balm, bag balm tin flew across my room into the
Wow.
wall. And that was really interesting. And what I had correlated to that I had a friend pass on. And I don't know if there's a connection to that kind of energy to the outside world. Not a
Yeah.
poltergeist, but that would consider a poltergeist kind of energy. But I didn't feel the fear. It was just surprising to see that event occur. And its correlation to somebody who was close to me. Were they trying to communicate? Because that's another aspect of the universe working
Mhm.
with us in a celestial form.
Right. And so this other person that has expired, right? They have left this mass behind. If they've become full-bodied energy at this point, is what we believe the soul is
Mhm.
anyway. And so you got to think
Right.
if they transform or they transfer themselves and they cross over into this fourth dimension as what people might believe, then from the fourth dimension it's easy to cross back to the third, and so on and so forth. A fourth dimensional being has the ability to go back to the third anytime it wants. You don't need a tesseract. It's just a
Yeah. Yeah.
simple transfer. It's no different than us going back to two-dimensional state when we write on paper, right? That's easy for us to do because we control the two dimension as a three-dimensional being. So
Mhm.
if a fourth dimensional being can do the same thing, then you would see that the spirit is able to come over and do whatever it needs to do with us. We cannot understand it or see it or put it into a perspective of any kind. We can't even see a shadow because the fourth dimension is so complex and different from what a three-dimensional being is capable of. We see things in length and depth and height and shadow. Fourth dimensional, there's a bunch of theories, and this is what they may be or they may see, but we won't even understand or know that. And it's why they create all these 3D forms of a tesseract and what a square might look like in the fourth dimension or a circle.
Mhm.
But again, it's only done through shadowing effects. But they say that in the fourth dimension, you can see through everything. Now, if that is true, then it supports the idea that everything is energy, because energy then is transparent. In a lot of ways, energy is transparent. And if you're a fourth dimensional being, you'll be able to see that energy. But you also have to have, if the fourth dimension is based on time, and time is the fence or whatever, it can encapsulate this energy, and it can put it into such a situation that it doesn't have the ability to extend it. It doesn't give it true freedom. Kind of like we don't have true freedom to do what we want to do in the third dimension. We're
Mhm.
limited by this physical
Body.
state that we're in, right? And then you start to understand. You can see it clearly then that exactly what you're talking about is possible from a fourth dimensional state to a three-dimensional state.
We could never know the mindset of why that event happened. Maybe I created it, maybe I was co-creator with something, or this person wanted to get my attention. You know.
Well, it could have been somewhere that you went. This mass attached itself to you, this entity, and perhaps you give a type of energy that it wanted to be around and um, just followed you and was trying to make itself known, trying to communicate. If you think of spirits in a fourth dimensional state, again, they can see right through you. They know everything about you. They can see. They don't see a body. They see energy, and they're able to tell what emotional state you're in. It's just that fast. So it's nothing to them. But over here, if they wanted to communicate with a three-dimensional form of us in this dimension, obviously they got to do something, and the only thing they have is energy at their disposal. And so for what they would do, they would draw energy from a three-dimensional being and use that same energy to move objects in the three-dimensional world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Actually, it does. It does. And it's the thing we manifest on this show is we never fear. We try not to fear it, just to analyze it, talk about it, understand it. It is our way as natives to
Correct.
understand, to sit and, like you said, and contemplate. If time doesn't exist, we don't know how to deal without the timeline. And so you obviously, as a medicine man, knew this conception of, and it's hard for people to get this around their minds because
Mm.
time is just a made up thing. There's no linear. But we have to linear it because I think our bodies would go wacko, wouldn't? If we didn't have time as a
Well,
as
again, time. Well,
maybe?
if you look at science, Michelle. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. When
No.
you look at science, it's they've already had theories that time doesn't even exist. It's a concept that's created by revolutions of the Earth going around a star.
Mhm, mhm.
And so again, we go back to the mind, and the mind creates time. If you did not have a memory, would you really be able to tell you've lived a life, or would have a life before you? No, because
Mhm.
the memory makes it relevant. The fact that you have a memory makes everything relevant to time. And so to live in this now, this time right here, is the most healthiest state of existence that you can live in. To go back and forth between past and present creates distortion in your mind, creates distortion in your emotion. Trauma is what we call it, right?
Right.
Or we call it anxiety because it's something that we can't see. It's not tangible, but our mind makes it real. So the healthiest place to exist is here, now,
In the
right here.
present.
Yep.
Yeah.
And time is also a social agreement, isn't it?
It is.
Think
It
about
is.
yeah.
And you know what's funny about that is that you go to different parts of the world and the time differs.
Yeah.
It changes.
Yeah.
And so when they do all these type of scientific experiments, they've noticed that time can change. You know, even jumping away from the planet for X amount of, you know, even a few seconds, you do that often, you're now out of sync with the Earth because the Earth is spinning. So if you're not constantly on this rock, and you don't have consistency with your time and space here, then what happens is, you know, you start to get out of sync with it. And that's a proven scientific fact.
Exactly.
They use it as a light effect where the light would be, it appears to be bouncing, but it really isn't. It's just an illusion that's happening with time.
Being
I can
able to
see,
time.
I can see, I'm reading your eyes, and I can see this is a lot of information to take in for you guys. And um, I'm sorry to overload you. I'm just trying to make it clear as I can for everyone to understand, including the listeners. So I hope they understand exactly what I was trying to say.
Oh, you are. You're very clear about conceptualizing it to the audience. These people who come on, they understand. They want some meat. They want
Yeah.
some
The
really,
answers.
yeah, they
That's
do.
what everybody is about. I mean, information is knowledge. Unfortunately, too much information can be just as hurtful as not enough.
Right. And it goes
And
against your belief systems if you get too much and you're not transitioning that
right.
information
Well, you don't
to,
want to be too analytical,
yeah,
and that
yeah.
leads to paralyzation of your mind. You
Mhm.
overthink things, and then it doesn't give you the ability to make a decision because you just overanalyzed everything.
Well, you're answering some things that I've had in my life, as you talk about the depth. These are the things that we should be talking about, dealing with. I've had
Paranormal.
experience with time, yeah. I've had experiences. We give it clarity by using powerful words, paranormal, ufology. These are things because our minds can't conceptualize like what you have explained today. One of the things is, I have time traveled. I've even gone back to the 1700s and saw an event, and I have spoken about this trip I took and being able to see Sacagawea in the
Right.
past, when I was actually in that area. So we think these are abnormalities, but this is the way our mind should function as human beings, and we've been dumbed down to forget this powerful spiritual knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been told that we're crazy. For thinking or believing such things. It's too fantastic for a lot of people who are
Yeah,
caught up in this matrix, right? Is what they call it now, the matrix.
the
So
Matrix, yes.
you get caught up in that, and you believe in the way that it's being presented to you so much that your mind fractures when you start to remove yourself out of it. It takes a
Mm.
lot of practice, but once you do and you have that capability, um, and then what becomes real is you have astral projection. That becomes a very real thing. And I believe
Yes.
that's what you're talking about, is being an
Mhm.
astral planer or astral projector, astro traveler, and the many other names. Recently, I've helped an individual who was an astral traveler who got caught between two worlds, and I had to bring him back. And that was a very interesting ceremony that I performed. But he's doing fine now. Everything is good with him, and I'm just glad that he didn't hurt himself anymore. Your energy is very sacred, and what you do with that energy, you have to be very careful with, because it is your life source. And when you start to mess with your life source, you can expire yourself.
So can your spirit fracture, like your, as we call today, schizophrenic behaviors, mindsets, can that fracture the mind by doing this astral travel intentionally? Can it?
Yes, yes,
Wait,
it can, because your mind and your body cannot exist without the other. It
okay,
doesn't work that way. And
okay,
so when you're astral projecting, you're releasing your energy, and we call it leaving your body, but really, your energy is gone, and that energy is necessary to create this triangular type of existence within you. In like body, spirit, and mind. Well,
mhm,
you can't have one without the other. You got to have all of that in order to function here in this dimension, this reality. And so schizophrenia could easily be, we could theorize and say that that is an actual issue of a person who has either given up too much energy or has actually traveled and gone beyond what they're meant to, because there's, from my understanding, and I've seen this personally, is a person who's been on meth. They've gone days and days without sleeping, and when they finally decide to come off that drug and sober up, or they're not there, like they actually put themselves into a schizophrenic state
okay,
because of the lack of sleep. And so again, the body cannot exist without the mind, but the energy you have needs to revitalize itself. This is
okay,
why we sleep, right? If you were to sleep directly upon the earth, you would get the most amount of energy that you can hold within this body, this existence. Because we sleep on beds and we wear shoes, we're not always in contact with the natural state that we were meant to be in. And that's why you're not running at 100% every single day of your life, and slowly, over time, your life energy just dissipates and you expire. And we call it, you have a weak immune system, or your immune system, you have autoimmune deficiency and things. But imagine if you were able to just sleep inside the earth day after day, revitalize yourself, and boom, you're back, and your systems are working the way that it needs to work, and you're back to 100%. So that is what spirituality is all about, is reconnecting with a natural order and a natural energy that the earth provides. And this is why we call it Mother Earth provides everything we need, but in a spiritual state, not materialistic at all.
And just rewinding a minute, Art, to the schizophrenia you were talking about, and sometimes the voices in their head. Could that likely be other entities that have come in a time where we're, you know, unprepared or not protected?
Now it depends. It really depends on where that initially started for the person. Unintentionally, I think we get into these situations where we're not aware that we have astro projected or astral planed, or traveled outside of our bodies, even for extended periods of time. There are some people that believe that that is the best way to exist. They love that sensation that it provides to them, and it's something that they've grown fond of. similar to maybe a drug feeling. Maybe it releases an endorphin of some kind and creates pleasure. But ultimately, what I think about and what I theorize is that people with schizophrenia, they've gone to the seventh sense of their body, and now telepathy is possible, right? And when you break your mind, it creates new connections inside your new neurons, right? New neural connections inside your mind. And this is scientifically proven that when you create so much stress in a person's mind, you can create a different flow of energy within their brain, and how the brain functions and the way that it works, the energy that moves it around, so to speak. So the neurology behind it could suggest that the individual, whoever may be experiencing voices or other things, may just be utilizing a telepathic power that is relevant to their state of mind at that point, because now you have a brain that we call it dysfunctional. But what if it's a natural function and we're just misinterpreting all that information and misinterpreting that individual? This is based upon people who used to cut off a whole leg for a small cut, right? That's who has created our medical books and so on and so forth. And so it's not like everybody's always had the best intention for us as human beings. Even when they created science or created medicine, it wasn't always based upon the best outcome for human being. We get into talks about morality and other types of arguments that can be made upon that. But in the bottom line for everything that we exist in this planet is always going to be, it's about progress. We have to make progress. It's about evolution. We have to evolve. And do we really have to? I think we were doing fine before we had all of this, now we got pharmaceutical companies who don't want to help you, and have no sense of moral obligation to help anybody. It's all about money and materialistic item. And so we get back into a more spiritual state. Now we are valuing ourselves as individuals. If we remain autonomous to ourselves, we ultimately can see the world in a better way for ourselves. Now we create our reality. And so natural things that happen, we have a lot of natural herbs that we use in Navajo culture to
Mhm.
provide medicine for ourselves. During the pandemic, when that was going on, the medicine people were gathering herbs and they were drinking that, utilizing it in different ceremonies, and COVID never affected them.
And you're talking about a natural evolution as opposed to a forced evolution.
Correct. Industrialization was a forced evolution. But again, it was based upon monetary gains, material gains, etc. For whatever reason, a society has to have an economy, uh, whatever reason, right? Democratic republics exist because of theology and religion, which started with the Roman Catholic Church, etc. So there's a lot of things that I believe we have truly forgotten about, in a natural state, that we need to get back to. As a medicine man, that's what I believe. I'm here to help and I'm here to heal, and I'm here to do it intelligently and with integrity. So to have that kind of oath, it's an internal one that I put on myself, and I try to be as authentic as I can with information. And if I don't know, I will tell you I don't know.
Art, we're at the top of the hour, and I am so fascinated with what I've learned here today. And I
Yeah.
know that our audience and myself and Laura have learned so
Yeah.
much your abilities and what you've learned through the process of even of your own life. And I think someone someday will name it the nacho theory. Uh, you know,
Right, right. The,
that is a
the
wonderful story.
nachos.
The nacho theory. Yeah. I think it should, like you said, it's proven scientific methodology. But, so much of our world today, we are listening to social media is telling us about all these things that are happening, the negativity in our world, the fires, the wars, the economy. And I don't like hearing those things. And
Mhm.
I think this is a great start. What you shared today is a must for those to listen to this podcast show. And we are so grateful for those who have stuck by our side. Um, we have some exciting news coming. We're going to be on a different platform, but we are expanding our audience. Laura will be coming with us, and we would love to have you again on our show
Sure.
as we explore this new platform. You'll hear of the information coming here soon on our, and but I'm not going to say this is the last show on Restream, but it is. And we're excited. And our audience, you can follow us and we'll let you know where to go to listen to our new season 2 and where we're going. And I'm sorry that John and Stan couldn't be here today. They can re-listen to this broadcast, as all of you out there. I noticed that Julie Jenkins had a jury duty uh, calling there. But we are so thankful for our audience and what they've done. How can they get a hold of you, Art? Is there any place they could contact you if they want questions answered?
Sure. You can contact me email. So that my email address is Art Hardy, ARTHARDY 001 at gmail.com.
Thank you. And Laura?
Fabulous. You can contact me at laura2feathers@gmail.com with the number 2. I do private sessions on self-empowerment using shamanic practices and so on. Everything we've talked about today, which has been absolutely amazing. I'm honoured to be here, honoured to be moving with you to the new platform, you and the Rangers, and Art, just be fabulous to have you on again. There's so much I personally can learn from you, but I'm sure the audience feel the same too. So it's wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much, Art.
Yeah, good to meet you, Laura. Thank you for
Thank
being
Thank
here.
you all for being our show. And you can reach the Paranormal Rangers at nativeparanormalrangers@gmail.com. We are certainly going to be having some exciting things going to happen this year. And we are so grateful to have Art. Art, thank you for your knowledge and
Sure.
like I said, the glassy-eyed look for the information is because, wow, it's finally time to have learned from the we've had out there for a long time.
Yeah, I see that look a lot when I come out. So, it's fine. It's fine.
Well,
It's a good look.
Will your information go out on your Facebook page for the audience?
yes, it will. And it'll be other platforms that will have information. But right now, we are working on the platform. So we're
Yes.
excited to have everybody coming over and having another guest, Art on our new platform. We'd love to have you come on from time to time.
Yeah,
So
no problem.
have a great day, everybody. And thank you,
Thank
Art, for
you.
being on our show.
Thank you, Art. Bye, Michelle.